Hey guys, welcome to Couch Lock, your number one movie podcast. Today, we are shining the spoiler-filled spotlight on HBO's The Last of Us, starring Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. This is the long-awaited adaptation of the 2013 action-adventure video game developed by Naughty Dog. There is a lot to unpack here, and the only thing more ravenous and horrifying than the clickers is The Last of Us fanbase. So with that being said, it is time to lock it in.
Awesome. Yes, let's get it. The ravenous fan base. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's I guess that's a good way to describe it. Like video game adaptations have always kind of had they're kind of a hard sell, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, video game fan bases already are kind of crazy, and then you mix it with like something these people love and then put different studio hands on it that think they know what they're doing and they really
Yeah.
don't. And
It can get messy real quick, but I'm excited to break this one down with you because I know that we've both played, at least we've both played the first one, right?
yeah.
The Last of Us. So in a post-apocalyptic world that has been overrun by really pissed off mushrooms, a shit father must open his heart to a strange kid in order to save the future of mankind. It is described as a love story, and that's not a good thing. Let's break it down. The season one just ended, and I think that it is definitely deserving of at least an overall season one recap by us. So, yeah, I mean, you mentioned it a little bit, but a backstory on The Last of Us here. It started as a video game released by Naughty Dog and Sony Entertainment. What was that, like back 2013, right?
2013, yeah.
Thoughts, feelings?
So I knew the story of the game going into it, which is unfortunate. But it hit a lot of beats I wasn't expecting, and I was very impressed, especially for the time when the scene was filled, like the video game scene was filled with action adventure games that were more about the action and less about the story. This was definitely something that stuck out.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like anytime you see that, like, you're going to get, like, a PlayStation exclusive, Sony is doing something like this, it's always going to be a good story. Because, like, God of War, same deal for me. Like, it's just really good storytelling. It almost doesn't matter what all of, like, the pack-on details of the story are because the root of it is really good. Oh, also, I'm realizing another, like, parent figure, child figure story.
Oh,
And how that plays out. Kind of
Kratos and
interesting.
Atreus with God of War, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But at least for like The Last of Us, when I played through the game, I remember especially like that opening sequence when you're running through the town on the night of the outbreak, right? I felt like my heart beat racing during that part of the game, and it set the tone for in my opinion, the rest of how that game kind of feels. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
just like I can't believe what's happening. Now Naughty Dog is also known for the Uncharted series, which was they did a movie release starring Tom Holland, right?
Oh, yeah, that's
did
right.
did you get to see that one at all?
No, it looked like it did not look like it was my thing.
Yeah, no,
Although
that's
the
fair.
Uncharted games are super fun.
The Uncharted games are really fun. Also, a Neil Druckmann, right? Neil
Yes.
Druckmann creation.
Yeah.
So yeah, the guy who created The Last of Us. Did he create Uncharted, or did he just help write?
I think he was a writer on it. I don't know if he was the creative director like he was for The Last of Us.
Gotcha. Well, at any rate, Uncharted, that movie didn't. It felt too blockbustery and not in any of the good ways. You know what I mean? Like it was just kind of like action scene after action scene, and then we had some like famous names attached to it that made you want to go see it. Other than that, it I don't know, like the storytelling aspects of The Last of Us are so intense. It's almost hard for me to imagine they came from the same creator.
Yeah, 100%. And it was one of those things where when it was announced that they were doing this show, a lot of people were wondering why, because the story was already told so well in the game.
Mm-hmm.
No one really felt like they needed to make a show or a movie out of it.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting because I remember when the video game first came out, like one of the big praising points was the visual aspect of it as well. It was like, wow, this is so stunningly beautiful. And I know Uncharted had that same reaction too, although I think that The Last of Us tells a story that's so involved and so cinematic that to give it an HBO spotlight like they did was the right move. Whereas like maybe that's where Uncharted kind of failed a little bit, was deciding to give us just like a movie format instead of a series format. It could have probably benefited from having like a slower pace to it and more time to go into like the fun missions and like The Last of Us had those really like spot on gaming moments, right? Where it like matched up really well. We can get into that a little bit more, but just to kind of touch more a little bit on Neil Druckmann, are you a fan of his creations? Where do you stand on him?
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of a name that I never really heard until this was coming out, and then they have a great documentary on YouTube about the making of the Last of Us video game, and it shows his creative process kind of, and it shows him working with the actors in the motion capture suits and how they kind of organically created this story on the spot, and it's really amazing. And they talk about how coming up with the concepts of the cordyceps and new kind of zombies, and it's so amazing. And so in watching that, I was kind of like, oh, this Neil Druckmann guy's kind of got it going on. And then come to find out he is part of the showrunner or he's one of the other showrunners for the Last of Us TV series. And he's helping bring it to the screen, which I think is a huge part in this show's success, is having the creative director of the game work on it.
It's like it's like secret sauce for a project, really. And like Craig Mazin, the other guy that's responsible for bringing this project to HBO Max and putting it on the screen, I think did a really good job of relinquishing control and also like giving us that added edge of like the things that they did change to the story and the things they did add to the story were well done. You can see that they balanced each other in that creative flow in a really nice way. And I think that's like really the root of it, and what I want to personally see more in storytelling and in movies and TV shows is just like let's service the story we're trying to tell, and we'll do the choice. We'll make the choice that's right for the story. The Last of Us, I think, is a really good example of what kind of opportunities you can serve an audience if you're willing to just try to do your best for the story and for your characters.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the huge things that they talk about, because they have a podcast, the Last of Us podcast, where they talk about each episode. And
yes, I'm gonna be. Oh no, I'm sad without it now. I just realized it.
I know it became part of my routine listening to that, but
damn.
Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann are both on it, and Craig Mazin talks about being a fan of the game and wanting to get this made for a while, make an adaptation for it.
Hell yeah.
And he also talks about knowing that fans can be picky, but he says, and this is what I wish more people did in this day and age, is instead of servicing the fans, he's focusing on servicing the story and what's going to be best for the story, not what's going to be best for fans. It's not that the fans don't matter, but the story is more important, and they really followed that to a T.
Yeah, and that's like, I mean, it's a chance that I think creatives have to take, is like, okay, I'm gonna make this thing and I hope people like it, but if you're doing service to the original idea behind your project, right, if that's really worth what you think it's worth, all this work you're putting into it, it'll shine on its own. The fans will find it.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think the game already had that tone set of like, no, the fans love this story. The fans love these characters. Like, just do right by the story, do right by the characters, and the fans will be okay. Like, the pieces will fall where they may, and when the dust settles, I think everybody's gonna really end up walking away liking this series.
Right, and it's funny because there are some changes that had to be made, because
Yeah,
a video game is way different than a movie. You can't interact with the movie the same way you can with a video game, and
totally.
you don't spend the same amount of time with. You spend probably double the time in a video game than you would a TV show or a movie with the characters with
Right.
only one character. So there's a bunch of changes that have to be made, and
Mm-hmm.
the elegance comes from what those decisions are and the reasoning behind them.
Yeah, totally. And I think they did a really great job of balancing those scenes where you could just put like a side by side up. And I'm sure we've all seen the videos on going around on social media of how frame by frame they've pretty much replicated some of these scenes
Right.
right out of the video game. But at the same time, they've taken liberties in other areas, changed the story up completely, and kind of left it up to the audience. Okay, well, we did this. I hope you like it.
Right.
Personally, for me, there wasn't a single instance where I was disappointed with the change they made.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I wasn't disappointed in anything. I will say there were changes I was more crazy about than others.
Okay,
Um,
that's fair.
but overall, I'm super happy with how this turned out. As a fan of the game, I'm super stoked with the show.
Probably one of the more prominent changes to the storyline was how the cordyceps communicate and travel. Of course, in the game,
Yeah.
they are transmitted in the air, and our characters are constantly like shuffling masks on and off as they enter certain areas in the game.
Mhm.
Well, the creators have already come out and said, well, that's just like not gonna work in a real life situation. So instead now we've got like these long, they're described as like miles and miles long like underground root systems basically that our zombie mushroom friends can
And
talk to
they're
each
all
other through,
interconnected and one
which is
of
just
one being.
fucking terrifying. Like,
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. That's one of the ideas that when Craig Mazin came to Neil Druckmann with it, he was kind of like, "Fuck, like why didn't I think of that?"
I know, yeah, like that's I would understand the disappointment there because it's a brilliant idea.
It really is great.
It gives like a nice twist to the zombie story, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And they have also were able to flesh out some of the side characters that you weren't really able to get in the main game.
Oh yeah, which we should definitely talk about Tess's death scene, considering we're discussing those differences because they changed that scene up and it's so much better than the game. It's, oh my god, almost undescribably better.
Yeah, I would agree. I didn't have a problem with it in the game, but I would
You know,
agree that it's better in the show.
I didn't have a problem with it in the game either because at that point, like, things were just, you were finally starting, like you finally had Ellie, the story was kind of starting, right? Whereas, yes, the story is still at that moment in the show, but they decided to give Tess this way more like romantic death scene, right?
Badass, like, yeah,
Exactly.
for sure.
Cause like, yeah, in the game, like she stops Fedra from coming after you, right? Which, yeah, that's cool. It helps move the story forward. But like that, the kiss scene of the cordyceps coming out of the zombie's mouth, the infected's mouth, and just like the oh man, it's, you can almost feel it. It's so gnarly.
Yeah, it's nasty.
And
The
just
struggle to it
slow
was
it down.
light the lighter,
Yeah.
right? The slow struggle, like the desperation to do everything you can to
Like, I just need to do this last
this
thing.
last thing.
One
This
last
is all I
thing.
need to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the relationship between Tess and Joel is something else that was expanded upon as well. And I really enjoyed that.
My
It made
God.
her death feel a lot more impactful. And
And to speak to the acting as well, like, yeah, they
Yeah.
really expanded that relationship, but they didn't really give it much more than the game did. It was really just the actors, the way they looked at each other, the way they, moved around each other. Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
These two are comfortable.
I will say one of my favorite changes. This is one of them. I have quite a few changes that I really liked. One of my favorite changes is Bill and Frank. their story.
Oh man. Yeah, when the game first came out, and especially after the DLC of Ellie and Riley kissing came out, they were getting a lot of like really positive feedback, especially from like the LGBT community, and it was really I don't know, it was nice to see them like kind of tap back into that element of storytelling. Not to like press the issue too much, but
No, well, I feel like they've kind of always worn that on their sleeve. They've always kind of proudly supported that, and as far as the game goes, it's part of its identity, I feel, in a way.
And as I mentioned in the like that little synopsis, they described this as a love story, and that's not always a good thing. I feel like in episode 3, when we get that telling of this couple that somehow manages to find the most sense of normalcy in this totally crazy situation, and this fucked up world where normal is a pipe dream, they somehow like form a love, and they build a life that's designed to protect that love. I think that as time moves forward, we're already seeing it, and we're gonna continue to see more creators and storytellers that are prepared to kind of tell these stories from the gay perspective. I hope audiences are ready to accept what they see as valid and real, and I think that the response that episode 3 of The Last of Us got is a really good indicator that us as a society is like kind of moving forward on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when the game came out, they were like, I remember the reception of it being sort of controversial because of the homosexuality and stuff inside of it. But like I said, the game wore it on its sleeve. It was always a part of it. The DLC was even supposed to be included in the main game, but they didn't have enough time to fit it in there. Like, it was always there.
Sure.
And I really
and they don't shy away from it in part 2 either. So
right. Yeah, absolutely. And I do love the idea of Bill and Frank kind of getting a new ending to their story, a happier ending to their story, because in the game, Frank dies, right? And then Frank that takes his life? He hangs himself in the garage, or was that Bill?
Yeah, so in the game, it is a way more tragic ending, and I was bracing myself for it, and when it didn't come and we got that happy ending, I was like, oh, okay, yes, okay, thank you. But so in the game, Bill and Frank have a fight, and Frank storms off, right? And as he's stormed off, he gets infected, so he hangs himself, essentially. Bill finds him with Ellie and Joel while on the hunt for a car battery.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so it is a far more tragic, and once again, we get back to that main theme. We're telling a love story, and in episode 3, we're telling this very forbidden, the story of this very forbidden love. It's become even more forbidden because, like, what are the odds of you finding another gay man in the middle of an apocalypse? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and I love a big theme of the show is, like, what will love make you do? And what
would you do for your love?
Yeah, and what's the ugly side of love too? For this one, the ugly side of this love was taking their lives together, but like it's still kind of beautiful, but it's still the ugly side of it. Or like for Bill, he's opening up his home to strangers. He would have never done that if he hadn't fallen in love with Frank. And that's kind of, I heard the creators say on the podcast that they kind of made this episode the skeleton key of the entire show. And there's a lot of mirroring in throughout the episodes, and especially with the last episode.
You feel it all the way through. There's these moments in almost every episode where that heart pinging sensation of when you're watching this show just it hurts and is amazing all at the same time.
Yeah.
Just as we work through the series, there's so many these moments that just really resonate on that theme of love and what would you do for it. There's some very twisted things we would do for love, right?
Right. Love
One
makes
of
people do twisted things.
One of the changes I noticed is that in the game, the group of people that David is looking after, they know they're eating human meat.
Oh, really? I forgot about that.
Yeah, but in the show, he's doing it in secret. There's
Kind
only
of
a group of
under the
know.
table. And is he like kind of the same religious leader in the game? I don't remember that part. Okay.
Yeah, that part's the same. There's like that
Okay.
big sign behind him in like the gathering
I remember.
there. I think that's the same. But yeah, he is once again like he's trying to take care of these people. He feels a responsibility for these people.
Mm-hmm.
He can't bring himself to say straight up like, "Hey, I'm feeding your like dead family members to you. Hope that's cool."
We'll bury your dad in the summer. Don't worry about it, kid.
It's like we'll bury most of him, some of him.
Well, the outhouses,
we're gonna bury the parts we can't eat.
We have big holes underneath the outhouses, so technically he's gonna get buried.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's fucked up, bro.
Well,
that's so funny. Yeah, like we see like the polar opposite of episode 3, like that sort of
right.
that root of love. Like this show really covers the gambit.
I think a really good example of that is Sam and Henry, because Henry loves his brother Sam, and his brother Sam is sick. And what does he have to do? He has to kill somebody for Sam because he loves Sam. So his love for his brother is making him do these crazy things.
Yeah, that's 100%. And also the way that they made Sam deaf in the show. That
was another one of my favorite twists. It added such another layer of depth to their connection, their character, and the actor that played him is actually deaf. He's like a super talented kid, and I love how they made like his they didn't make that his tragedy. It was just a part of his character. His tragedy was more so like he had what was it, Luke? What did he have? What did he have?
He had
leukemia?
Like leukemia. Yeah, he had
Crazy.
leukemia.
Like that was his tragedy, not his the fact that he was deaf. Almost like it just brought such another layer to him and his brother's relationship.
100%. And even though Sam is the one that's deaf, and also they've changed it up to give him leukemia, right?
Yeah.
It's like almost more impacting on Henry's character. Like that change up is almost more impacting to Henry's character in the show, simply because he's like Joel. He's the caretaker of this young child, but now this young child is like in super need of somebody, right? Like that's even more weight put on this young man's shoulders. And man, that one was fucking brutal.
I mean, we saw it coming, and it was still insanely brutal. And
that's brutal. And if you don't think it's brutal, you either didn't watch the episode or you're lying. So
yeah, so Sam gets infected, and Henry, out of trying to protect Ellie, shoots Sam, and immediately he doesn't have anything left.
Yeah,
that was his love. Sam was his love, and it's completely gone. And there's some things in this show, like the sense of loneliness and dread, that I think they really nailed, especially in his character.
Well, and it's interesting because as we learn in the season finale, Joel himself tried to take his own life.
Yeah,
right?
that was a really interesting addition, and I really like that too. And it made him, and the way he addressed it too. He says, "It wasn't time that healed me. And the way he says it to Ellie and the way that she looks back at him, it was just his way of saying I love you, thank you.
Right.
But they both would
And she
rather say
understood.
yeah, and they both would rather just leave it at that. They're not actually going to
Right.
say I love you or
Right.
anything. They're just going to leave it at that. And I really love that.
Well, and I think of that moment, and then I go back to that moment right before Henry takes his own life, and Joel is pleading with him, right? And it kind of adds like a different,
wow,
like a
yeah.
different colored lens to that moment.
Absolutely.
In this weird role reversal, right? Like, please don't do this.
Yeah.
You'll find another way. And even in that moment, he's still not 100% sold on Ellie. He's still not
Yeah.
100% opening to her,
Yeah.
but he can feel it happening, right?
Yeah,
And
for
I
sure.
feel like him watching Henry take his own life only makes him realize more, like, that could have been, would have been me, but now I have this opportunity here in front of me, and onward we press, right? And then shortly afterwards we find Joel's brother, and Joel really starts to open up and feel that connection with Ellie.
Yeah,
shortly
that was
after.
another change too. Was that in the game, Joel knew where Tommy was,
Oh yeah.
where in this one they're on the search for Tommy and then they find him. Because in the game they were estranged
What
for
are the
some
odds?
reasons. But yeah, that scene where he kind of breaks down and opens up to Tommy was the first time we really see Joel like that, and it's off-putting in a way, but it was so well acted, and such a beautiful moment. And then the part that they kept from the game is when Joel goes to tell Ellie that Tommy's taking her instead of him, and they have that argument, and it's shot pretty much exactly like it is in the game.
Oh,
and
down to the wallpaper.
Yeah, and that was probably one of my favorite. There's one other, but that was one of my favorite instances of keeping it exactly the same as the game, and how that can benefit a project like this.
Yeah, that was fantastic. And even in the after episode podcast that they release, Craig Mazin even mentions that there was no reason to change that scene. It was perfect already. They didn't have to change it. There were things that they were open to, but there were things that had to be exactly the same.
Yeah, and he says the same thing about the ending as well. He says the ending is right. There's no reason to change it. Like, there's nothing we're gonna change because it's right. There's nothing to change about it. It's perfectly. It's exactly the way it needs to be. Another really cool little Easter egg is during the birth of Ellie in the last episode. She is played by Ashley
Johnson.
I was gonna say Jackson.
Ashley Johnson.
And there was something so poetic about her doing that. She played it perfectly well. And yeah, you see essences of Ellie in her, and she's like passing the baton in a way, and it's so cool to see that for sure. And especially knowing how much she loves Ellie and how big of a part of her life Ellie is. It was definitely very poetic to see that.
It's interesting because Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker, who voiced Joel in the video game, both ended up contributing so much to these characters. They inspired Neil during the creation of the game, and also in extension, Craig in the show, right? So to do service to the characters meant to do service to these voice actors as well,
which is cool because so many times in the industry of film, voice actors, like especially for video games, no one gives a fuck, like
right
they could have easily just blown them off, but because Neil Druckmann's involved, because Craig Mazin's such a big fan, like they just wouldn't do that. And I think that's part of what makes this adaptation so special, is that they really 100%. Respect the source material, they respect the people involved. I think that's part of why this is so successful.
Yeah, it's kind of like catching lightning in a bottle, right? You get a group of people that are super passionate about a project and about creating a specific vision together,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a surefire win. This is an example of something like that, I think. Um, yeah, Ashley Johnson's performance in that season finale, getting to learn a bit more about Ellie, and how the hell does she avoid becoming infected in the first place? That was just so great. And I know that was something that Neil Druckmann wanted to create from the get go.
Yeah, he
Um,
wrote that and wanted to make it like a short or something, which I think
yeah,
is really cool. So that's pretty much canon to the Last of Us video game.
like I mean, as close as you can get without it being in the game, pretty
Right,
much,
yeah.
right?
I'd say
And
so.
also, can we just talk about how like eerily similar Bella Ramsey and Ashley Johnson
Oh,
look?
yeah.
Like, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, for sure. And they have like sort of the same mannerisms.
Yeah, for
They
real.
casted this really well.
Man, so good. Yeah, all the way through. And Bella Ramsey, I never had like an issue. I never had an issue with her. Even from like the first announcement, but I wasn't really sold on her until about our halfway point in the episode or in the season. I wasn't sure if she was just going to be too little, like too kiddish,
Right.
or if she could be that mature Ellie, especially the one that we see come back in part 2. And by the end of the season finale, especially like that closing out scene, which once again very similar to the video games, right?
Yeah, which was
Where
very important.
right, where Joel is kind of, lying to her essentially about what happened in the hospital. I really could see, okay, Bella Ramsey could pull off part 2 Ellie.
Oh,
I
yeah.
feel like she could do this 100%.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of
Um,
the last episode and that last scene and what love will make you do, um, Joel just completely goes against every sense of anything and
yeah.
kills the people that are trying to save the world to save. I was gonna call her
Hit.
Billy. To save Billy.
Come on,
Uh,
Billy.
to save Ellie. And he
Yeah.
does it so selfishly because he loves her so much. And what's her name? The woman
Marlene.
Marlene. Yeah, Marlene.
Mhm.
And Marlene says, like, would Ellie even want you doing this? And he knows that she wouldn't.
Oh yeah.
You know, it
Oh,
feels so ugly
yeah.
in the mix of the score. That was my favorite musical part of the whole entire show, was the last, like, him getting Ellie from the hospital. The music was so just sad and heartbreaking. Yeah,
Gustavo.
Gustavo, he was great. Another thing I really loved, that they brought back the original composer of the game, because the music holds such an identity with The Last of
Oh,
Us.
so good. Yes.
And yeah, I'm super happy they brought him back.
So, give me your overall, Mike. Season 1, how you feeling?
I loved it. I'm really excited for the next. I'm excited for what effects this show is going to have with video game adaptations going forward. I think
Yeah,
it
me
sends a
too.
very clear message that people want this sort of thing, but you got to do it right.
Truly,
And
truly.
I am insanely excited knowing some of the events of part 2, what season 2 is going to look like, and I still have to play that. I'm probably gonna play that sooner than later.
Oh, wow. Or you have the opportunity to go into part 2 blind.
I know, but I don't think I could. I don't think I could. We'll see.
Come
I
on,
haven't. We'll cross
buddy.
that bridge when we come to it.
Okay. I believe in you.
But
Believe in you to
Bella
make
Ramsey,
the right choice.
Bella Ramsey is confirmed to return, and I'm sure Pedro Pascal will be back as well.
Oh, they've got to. Yeah,
And
100%.
speaking, what about you? What's your overall thoughts?
I was super stoked on part 1. I thought they did a fantastic job through and through. Super entertaining. made me cry, which is something that hasn't happened in a TV show, especially in a
Right.
really long time. So
I will
hats
say,
off, hats off. I'm so
I
excited
will
for
say
part
that
two.
I want more clickers.
Mm,
I don't want to be that guy that says
yes,
I want more action, I need action, but I would have really enjoyed more clickers. I
the
actually, it's kind of
clickers
funny.
and more bloaters.
It's yeah, more bloaters too. It's kind of funny because they said that in the original game they prioritized story over action, and they kind of did that here in their, like, ironically
Mm-hmm.
they're getting kind of um what's the word I'm looking for, they're getting kind of criticized for prioritizing the characters and the story over the action, which I don't
Oh, I
necessarily agree
see.
with, but I would like to see some more clickers. The design, the practical effects, and the actors
Was
playing
so
them
good.
was so
Mm-hmm.
good. And
It
yeah,
was
I
definitely
really
worth
I want
seeing
more of
more
that.
of. Well, have no fear because part two has been confirmed. It's in the works. And you might not know it, Mike, but there are even more like jaw dropping what the fuck moments in part two,
I
if you
am
can believe it.
looking forward to it.
If
I'm
you can
looking forward
believe
to
it.
it.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, geez, thumbs up. Yeah,
Yep.
would recommend.
Couch lock thumbs up.
Give it a thumbs up.
Just like this
Right
video.
on. Oh. Oh, that was so corny.
That's how you do it. Gotta pepper them in.
Oh, okay. I'm leaving that.
Gotta pepper it.
Thumbs up. Yeah, give us a thumbs up on this video. Also, please don't forget to like and subscribe. You can find us everywhere at Couch Lock Pod. Mike, it's been a blast, buddy. I love you.
I love you more. And I
All
love
right.
you.